Well, hey, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Getting ready to record Mike in the Midwest for this week. So stand by for that. We're going to talk Pinewoods. You're going to find out what that means in just 1 second. So hang tight. Let me write this down and we'll get cracking. All right. There we go. All righty then. Let's do this. Hello to everybody who's watching live on YouTube. I see a few people out there are. Hopefully you're having a good day. Get a swig of Coke Zero and get cracking. Let's do this. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to episode number 92 of the but this isn't, let me try that again because it's not the Be Our Guest podcast. You guys caught me. What's up, Daniel? What's up, Margie? Up in northern New York. It's windy as anything here in St. Louis today, but at least the sun's out. It's a little warm. It's 57, it says on my taskbar right now, so not too bad. It's been freezing. It's warmest it's been actually in the last like 4 or 5 days. All right, let's try this again. Remember that it's not the Be Our Guest podcast today. Here we go. I'm a robot. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to Mike in the Midwest, a mini podcast for the amazing patrons just like you of the Be Our Guest podcast. Of course, I am Mike Rallman, host of our little show here and host of the Be Our Guest podcast. You know that because you're a patron of the big show, and I appreciate you so very much. Thank you so much for your support of everything that we do as a collective over on the Be Our Guest podcast. Pam and Ricky and Scott also pass along their thanks because I'll be honest, we have a great time doing the show. It's one of our favorite things. We get together, we get to laugh, we get to cut up, we get to talk to our friends all around the world. And it is a blessing to have the Be Our Guest podcast. We don't get to say that enough. It really is. I mean, my world, speaking of Mike in the Midwest, would be very, very small compared to what it is due to the podcast because I talk to people daily all around the country when we're helping, I help plan vacations for folks to Disney destinations. And because of that, I have guests who I speak with frequently in Florida, in Washington State, in Montana, in Texas, New York State, up in Canada. I have clients in Australia. I have clients in the United Kingdom, other places in Europe. It's amazing. Japan. And it's because of the show and it's because of podcasting. And again, I am so very thankful for the platform of podcasting because I kind of deep down in my life, I had a dream that I would have loved to have worked in radio. I would have thought that would have been a great job. My dad worked in radio. I've talked about that many times. My dad was a DJ here in St. Louis on the oldies radio station, KLOU 103.3, playing the oldies. And he was also the program director there for quite a while. And I always kind of wanted that job because he had that job in high school. But my dad also before that was a construction worker and worked very hard, manual labor, in terrible weather. His dad did that before him. And it was one of those things where he wanted his son to go to college and get a job where he had your paycheck didn't depend on the weather. He always said that. And you didn't come home a broken man is what he always said, because my dad put in concrete. And so he would literally come home some days and couldn't hardly walk because his back was so messed up because of, he'd be laying concrete in a basement or laying a driveway or a front porch or a patio or something, somebody's new house. And it was just terribly hard manual labor. And my dad really, he did it every day and took great care of our family. My grandpa loved that kind of stuff. My dad did it, I think, because he didn't want to disappoint my grandpa looking back on it. But he changed careers when I was in high school, went to broadcast center, kind of a trade school, to learn how to work in radio, which I was very proud of him for doing that. But, it's one of those things I kind of wanted to do that too, because what kid does not want to work in radio, right? You sit on your rear, you sit in a chair, you talk into a microphone and everybody listens to you and you can become a star. That's what I thought. And I wanted to do that, but my dad didn't really want me to go into that job either because there was no real job security in radio, as my dad quickly learned, is that, he saw it kind of tangentially, but it also happened to him a few times where you could be doing your job to the best of your ability. You're doing a nice job. You're doing everything you can. The ratings come out. And then all of a sudden, if you don't have what's called a good book for a quarter, the management can just decide to go a different way. They can bring in a whole new morning show. They can bring in a whole new program director, just on a, Monday morning staff meeting, boom, you're out of there and you got to go find another job. And many times the next job is in another city. And that's not really ideal when you have kids and they're in high school and stuff like that. So he really didn't want me to do this, even though I think he thought I would have done pretty well in that field, because this is one of the things I do kind of have the gift of gab. I like to talk. I did mobile DJing for my dad. We had a mobile DJ company. Every Saturday night, I was DJing a wedding reception or a prom or some kind of big event in St. Louis. So I kind of could, have a little of the chops to do the job, I think. But I think you always want what's best for your kids. I'm going through that right now with my daughter Paige, and she's working at Mizzou as a grad assistant in the Missouri basketball program, and she's going to have some offers probably to run some basketball programs, not as high as the SEC, but she might go to some others. She's got a lot of possibilities. But the thing is, she has an undergrad degree and she has 2 master's degrees at this point because of how long she's been at Mizzou and, working with the basketball program. They cover the master's degrees, and her undergrad degree is in biochemistry. And so that makes me super happy as somebody who was a former 6th grade teacher who taught science and who taught STEM. That's what I taught when I taught gifted for 9 years. I was basically a STEM teacher. I taught Lego robotics to my students. I taught rocketry to my students. I was always down at NASA for space shuttle launches back in the day, and I worked at Space Camp, and I taught teachers how to incorporate STEM into their curriculum. I helped write curriculum for Space Camp for educators. So I'm all in on STEM. And here's my daughter that has this, she's brilliant. She's super smart. She's got a STEM degree in her, in her tool belt there, and she's not using it, which I'm okay, because she's happy. And me and athletics. I mean, that's peanut butter and jelly for me. I love athletics. I've always loved athletics. I think you can learn so much through athletics. It builds character. It teaches discipline. It teaches camaraderie, teamwork, and I think all of life is a team. You help each other and you make friendships for life. I mean, there's nothing like being an athlete on a team sport. I truly believe that, and I really know that she's kind of at her calling, because she's helping to mold these young women at Mizzou, which are talented athletes. Don't get me wrong; they're blue blood athletes. But I think even having my daughter there, is a kind of a blue collar. She was an athlete too in high school, obviously not to the level of like an SEC star, but I think she has a lot to offer even those kids. So I don't think she's definitely wasting anything. I'm very proud of her, and I'm a Mizzou fan, and that she's on the bench at Mizzou. That my heart gets excited every time I see her on the SEC channel. But I'm also excited because I want her to be able to go get a job where she can make a good living. You want your kids to be able to have a nice house, to not have to work paycheck to paycheck, things like that. So we'll see how it goes. But I think, again, that's a long story, but I think that's what Mike in the Midwest is all about. I think my dad didn't want me to go into radio because he didn't want me to, I guess he didn't want to worry about me going in and doing my best job that I could in radio and then just getting blown out because the book came out and the numbers weren't high. Because that happened to him, because he was at 103.3 and then boom, they blew out not just my dad, they blew out everybody, the whole morning show. And then all of a sudden my dad 2 weeks later was on 96.3. It was kind of he went from the 50s, 60s channel to the 70s channel. So he got to get some newer music. I remember he did from so I heard him on 96.3, and it was just it was crazy. KDH, I can't remember, KDA, I don't remember, but yeah, it wasn't as powerful of a station, but it was fun, and it was a cool job. But I that's why I love podcasting. That's why I'm getting back to this, because while if I'd have worked in radio in St. Louis, I'd have been talking to all kinds of people around St. Louis. But podcasting allows you to literally talk to folks all around the world, on our entire planet. And I'm talking to you right now. So it is truly a blessing. And thank you for supporting the show through Patreon. Because of you, we get to put all this together. We get to make the show sound as good as it can. We get to do this consistently. We get to have shows out each and every week. I try to never miss a podcast. And I'm just glad to have you, and I'm appreciative of you. I know we don't get to say that enough in society. When you check out at the grocery store, you don't get to tell that person who's checking you out, I appreciate you being here so that I can, get my groceries. Because if those workers weren't there, things wouldn't work out as well. The stockers, at the grocery store, the person at the gas pumps. I know gas costs a lot of money, But if the person wasn't there at the gas station to check you out, we wouldn't be able to do that. So, I mean, it's one of those things we don't say thank you enough, but I want to make sure I always tell you thank you. All right. So what's going on in my world? Getting ready to head down to Walt Disney World on Friday morning. My flight is at 7:35 a.m. flying down on Southwest. Just going to do a quick in and out for the spring surprise weekend and going to be running the Race for the Taste 10K and the Tower of Terror 10 miler. I'm running the Race for the Taste 10K for Give Kids the World. So that's awesome. I'm super excited for that. Thanks to Steven over at Give Kids the World for helping me out with that bib. I appreciate them so very much. Always do. So if you're ever looking for a charity to donate to, or more importantly, if you're ever in Central Florida and you want to do some volunteer hours, Give Kids the World Village is an amazing place to volunteer. Not only is it just a great place to go because they do the Lord's work over there, it's kind of fun. I mean, you can actually go over there and be an attractions operator. You can drive the little train, or they have the kind of a swing attraction that kind of got me a little queasy. I'll be honest, because I just eaten a bunch of food when I got on it. They have kind of a little helicopter ride. It's a great place. I mean, you can scoop ice cream. You can help out in the Pizza Palace. It's an amazing place. If you ever have a chance, go to Give Kids World, volunteer. Your heart will be full. You will be helping in a way that most other people don't. So thank you to Steven for that bib for the 10K. That'll be running the 10 miler on Sunday. I'll say the weather looks like it might be a soggy one, but hey, any day you get to be at Walt Disney World and get to run, I don't care. If it rains, it rains. You know, I know a lot of people start freaking out about this time. Oh, it might rain and it's going to be terrible. It's not. You know, it is what it is. You can't stop it from raining. And if it rains, I'm going to have a good time running through the raindrops. And if it doesn't, bonus. It's going to be hot though, it looks like. But hey, I've run through hotter, so we'll see how it goes. I'm excited though to snack around. Of course, I'll be down there with my buddy #ScottyG, who's been there since last Friday. And when you have a friend like Scott, let me just give you a little behind the scenes. Every time he gets a killer snack or a good meal, he texts it to me. He takes a picture. You've probably seen all the pictures on Instagram or Facebook. Just follow him over there at FScott, EPSCOT, if you want to see some great pictures. And I'll be sitting down at lunch. You know, of course, this week I'm working every day, just working like a dog, trying to get ahead for the weekend. And I take my lunch break every day at 11:30 Central. That's my lunch break time. And I always have the same thing. I have a turkey sandwich on toast with cheese, and I have baked Lays when I can find them. Lately, you can't even find baked Lays at the grocery store. Maybe you can where you live. This week we have them at our grocery store, but we hadn't had them for a month before this week. So I'm excited that I do have them. They're my cheddar and sour cream and cheddar baked Lays. They are awesome, but I'm eating them too fast because they're like gold right now. They're so hard to find. Anyway, so I'm sitting down to this lunch, which I think is pretty kicking. It's what I have every day: turkey sandwich, baked Lays. And then, of course, Scott is going around World Showcase at Flower and Garden, texting me a picture of this taco he's eating in Mexico. And then, this sweet thing he's having in France. And, like all these things, he's killing me, and it's like he's at Gideon's having cake and he's having these donuts over at Caribbean Beach. I love Scott, but I got to get down there because I got to get in on some of this good food because he is killing me. Because what I'm having for a snack each night, I'm having Little Debbie zebra cakes, which are good. Don't get me wrong. Little Debbie zebra cakes, they're solid. They're a good little snack before bedtime, but they're nowhere near a Walt Disney World snack. So I'm excited to head down, have a few snacks, run a few miles, and most importantly, see a lot of friends. That's the most important thing about these race weekends. So I'll be excited for that. So watch again at BRGuestMike on Twitter and Instagram. I'll be posting as much as I can. I am coming back early Monday morning, so it's kind of just a weekend thing, so I get back and work. Also, I'm going to try to be on the Discord server. I have not been using that for a long time. I do want to hop on that a little bit more, so I'm trying to get in on that. Remember, patrons have their own server, so get in on that. The link is here at patreon.com/BRGuestPodcast to search through the posts, and it will be there. If you need the link, just let me know, and I'll try to dig that out for you to send me an email. Let's see what else. The weather's decent right now. Looking down at my taskbar, Windows 11 looks like it updates the weather for you now. So it's 57 and mostly cloudy. I can't complain. It has been cold here for like the last 4 or 5 days. We're going to get some pretty wicked storms through here tomorrow. So that's why I did the show today. So then in case the power goes out tomorrow, we have the show. Just wanted to get ahead too for the weekend since I'll be out of here Friday morning. And yeah, that's where we stand. So things are going pretty well. Just excited to to get down to Walt Disney World and have some more content to talk about next week. Oh, one other thing I wanted to tease is about this Friday show, since you're a patron. So this Friday, we have a special show, and it's called Mike's Big Announcement, which I will be making a big announcement about something that is pretty it's very important to me, and it's been over 14 years in the making. But I wanted you to know first that that's the title of this Friday's podcast, Mike's Big Announcement. I'm not going to give it to you here, even though you're a patron. I love you guys, and you guys get exclusive access, but I just want to dangle it out there just a little bit more and get you excited because it's going to be something definitely to talk about. So Friday show, Mike's Big Announcement. You have the title. Nobody else does yet. I put it in the Patreon Discord just a few minutes ago, so it's in there. So if you want to go over there and speculate away. But we'll have conversation. Again, I'll be at Walt Disney World when it drops. So we'll see how that goes. And then if you're at Walt Disney World, we can talk about it if you listen to the show, like on the plane ride down or driving down, whatever. We can talk in person because I'll be there. Anyway, so let's hit the feedback from last week's show. Last week, I kind of just talked about spring break. The girls were on spring break. Of course, I said, and it was true. We had horrible weather here in St. Louis for the entire week, well, except for Monday, because for some reason, whenever the majority of school districts have spring break in St. Louis, the weather is crummy. Now, the thing is, what's funny is there's always going to be a week before that where the weather is awesome. Because we've already had in St. Louis, we've had days that has gotten up to 85 degrees and been sunny for multiple days. So we've had really, really good weather. But right now it's been mostly in the 40s and 50s. And last week, that's how it was. We had terrible weather, but I did get to take Mallory. The one thing we did kind of that was fun. Last Friday, we went into a place called Top Golf. I don't know if you have those where you live, but it's kind of like a driving range on steroids. Like when I was a kid, we had a place called Tee Shots in Florissant, and it wasn't fancy. It was just a place where you could bring a golf club, and they had a few rentals, but the rental clubs that you could borrow were just tore up. I mean, they were terrible. Like the head, I remember my buddy Ryan one time, we used the rentals because we rode our bikes up there, and he used a rental club, and he swung like 3 times, and the head came flying off of the driver. And I mean, really, you could kill somebody that way because the head went flying off. I mean, it could have hit somebody. It's terrible. But most people brought their own clubs. But it was Tee Shots right next to the Grandview Plaza Schnuck store, which is a grocery store. But anyway, Top Golf it's a place on steroids, a driving range. It's like 3 decks, and you go in and you get a bay. So you have like a place to hit your golf balls. It's heated. It's got couches behind there. It's got like a little TV. Then you play games. Like there's targets out there in the zones, where you hit the golf balls. I'm not that great of a golfer, so I'm not really aiming. I'm just trying to drill them and hit them as far as I can, basically, but it was kind of fun. So, I didn't get to do a whole lot with Mallory last week because the weather was crummy and I was kind of busy doing work because I wasn't on spring break. But we had a good time with that, had Mexican food after that. So it was kind of a fun day. But yeah, if you have a Top Golf or if you ever vacation at a place where there is a Top Golf, it's kind of fun. It's really cool. It's like a triple decker driving range and it's real fancy. So we did that. So that's what we did there. But let's hit the feedback from last week's show. We have a couple of folks chiming in, and I got to get to this because I threw it out that I might run on the presidential platform in 2024 of leave daylight savings time alone. And we got a 50-50 split on the 2 pieces of feedback we got this week on that comment. So here we go. Trisha up in Wisconsin said, it's spring break here for most schools, 35 and snowing in Wisconsin. I find these March spring breaks odd. When I was a kid, we always had spring break the week after Easter. I think we did too, now that I think about it, because again, I went to a Christian school. I went to a private Christian school that was run by a Nazarene church. And so definitely our spring break always, I think it started on Good Friday. Like we were always off Good Friday, and then it was the week after Easter. So you got that bonus Friday off too. My daughter attends a church school, so she's still on that schedule, which is difficult when she has friends outside of school who are currently on break. I just keep reminding her that she gets to spend her break in Disney World. Well, that's good. That's a good trade-off. Yeah, it's a good way to remind your daughter. And you know what? I think I was the same thing. The public school kids, I don't think were off the same time I was. She says, P.S. You're crazy about daylight savings. With a little kid, it takes 5 days for her to settle into the new time change. In those days, she's a downright beat. I don't know what that means. Beast? I don't know. Okay, so I'm a little crazy. I don't think so. I think you just don't mess with it. But here's what Crystal has to say. I believe she's up in the Windy City in Chicago, just south of Trisha. Hey, Mike, our spring break doesn't start until after Easter, so hopefully it warms up by then. Last year we spent it at Walt Disney World, and the weather could not have been better in Florida. However, the weather was just as nice in Chicago. We didn't mind missing out and of course, when we returned, it was cold. She put a lot of O's. I 100% agree with you about daylight savings. I feel like the sunrises and sunsets just become more beautiful after we lose that hour in the spring. I never loved it more than last year running my first in person wine and dine. I felt that extra hour of sleep was like Disney magic. I didn't bring that up, but when I've run wine and dine, there's been many a year where that is the time change night, the Saturday night before you have to get up for the half marathon on Sunday. Okay, here's the thing about that though. It makes me a nervous wreck because I'm like, okay, are we doing the time change thing? Because literally you are getting up like at 2:30 in the morning, and that is like exactly when the time change happens. Normally you do the time change, you're at home, nobody cares because you're sleeping, because you go to bed at like 11. It happens in the middle of the night, you get your extra hour sleep, everything's good. I do remember that first time I was at Walt Disney World for the wine and dine race, and it happened, and I was up like during that exact moment where the clocks changed, and I'm like, um, what time is it? And like, I don't want to be late for the bus, and I don't want to miss the bus. I don't want to miss the race. And I kind of freaked out a little bit, but yeah, you do get the bonus hour of sleep, which they should change the clocks during Dopey. Seriously. How beautiful would it be to have an extra hour of sleep during Dopey before the marathon, before 26 miles? Oh man. There's my bonus thing I'm going to run on the presidential platform right there. We're going to change the clocks like in the second weekend of January and do it then. Oh my gosh, Crystal, thank you. And that is beautiful. Thanks to Trisha and Crystal for the feedback. If you have feedback about today's podcast or any podcast, please do take the time, drop by patreon.com/BeOurGuestPodcast, because I love sharing that here on the show. All right, let's get to today's topic. I don't want to make today's show too long. Here's what I wanted to talk about today. I fell into a rat hole in the last couple of days on Facebook. Now, let me tell you about this place that I visited as a kid. Now, this is as a kid when I was probably younger than 12. Let me just take a swig of soda here because when I'm by myself, I don't get to stop talking. When I was a kid, living in that first house that I've talked about here on the show on St. Daniel Lanes. Now, again, we moved when I was going between 6th and 7th grade. We moved so I could start middle school in 7th grade at a different middle school. But before that, I grew up in a little bitty starter house on a place called St. Daniel Lane. And across the street, I had a best friend named Ryan. Now, it was kind of funny because Ryan had two houses across the street from me. He had his mom, he had a single mother. I never knew Ryan's dad. I don't know if Ryan even knew his dad. He lived with a single mom, and his mom lived across the street and probably about 5 houses down to the left. But directly across the street from our house was Ryan's grandparents. And Ryan would go back and forth between his mom's house. And when his mom was working, he would be at his grandparents' house. And I remember his grandpa's name was Big Ed. And I think his grandma's name was Edith. I can't remember his grandma's name. I think it was Edith. And they had like little Pomeranian dogs. Like when you're 48 now, it's hard to look back and remember all the details. But I know his grandpa was a smoker, smoked all the time. You remember those kind of things, right? And he drove like a tan S10 little pickup. But more importantly, Ryan and I were like thick as thieves because, we were like from the time we were like 4 to the time we were like 12, we were together all the time. And it's just a matter of convenience that we were just together all the time because he was always across the street. Now, the funny thing is, we never went to school together because Ryan went to Sacred Heart, which was the Catholic school, the parochial school. And I went to North County Christian School, which was in Ferguson, which was probably about 15 minutes away, like I said, a Nazarene church. So we never went to school together. Neither one of us went to public schools at that point, and we never got to do that. So it's kind of we never played sports together because he always played for the CYC, which was the Catholic Youth Council League, and I always played for Corey League. So we never got to do kind of those things together. He was in Cub Scouts. I never did Cub Scouts, but man, did we play when we were home. When we were home, we played all the time. So we played every day, especially in the summer. And of course, there were other kids in the neighborhood, but it was Ryan and Mike all the time doing everything. Anyway, to get to the point of this story, today I want to talk to you about a place called Pinewoods Campgrounds and RV Park. And you might say, Mike, why are we talking about Pinewoods RV Campground Park, whatever it was called? And here's why. As I've mentioned here on the show many, many times, we didn't go on vacations as a kid. We just didn't do it. We didn't have a lot of the means. We went to Six Flags quite often. We'd get Six Flags season passes because you could get those pretty cheaply. My dad liked to go out there, and my dad really was like, I remember when I was really young, my dad had a best friend named Darwin, and they played in bands together. My dad was a musician, and he would take me out, and him and Darwin would go. Six Flags had an arcade, and they would play pinball all night out at Six Flags. And I remember they would sit me like on a pinball machine, and they would play pinball next to it just all night. So we would go out there, and then of course they'd ride rides and take me and stuff. But the thing was, we just didn't go on a lot of vacations. Now, here's the thing. Ryan across the street, his grandparents had a camper, like an RV, but it was a camper, but it was a camper where you could spend the night in it. It wasn't super fancy, but it was pretty big. And the thing was, at this place called Pine Woods, it was an RV park where you could leave your camper for the season. I guess looking back again, I was probably only 7 or 8 at the time. I don't know all the details. The details are only in my mind and they're sketchy, and I can't find a lot online. I've been trying to do research, and we'll talk about that in a second. Anyway, so they had this camper that it wasn't an RV. It didn't have like a motor in it. You would tow it like in a pickup or something like that, and you would just drop it off and leave it there. And they left this camper out at Pine Woods. Now, Pine Woods was located in Wentzville, Missouri. When I was a kid, this was far, far away from Florissant, where we grew up. However, where I live right now is equally far west from Florissant as Pine Woods was. So I live in St. Peters. That is about the same distance west from Florissant as Wentzville is, where Pine Woods used to be located. So I could be, if I wanted to be, I've looked on Google Maps, I can be to the spot where Pine Woods used to be. Spoiler, it's not there anymore. Probably in about 15 minutes by car. The funny thing is, though, like what happened was when we were kids, Pine Woods was a place that Ryan's grandparents would go for the weekend. On a Friday afternoon, they would pack up and they would, kind of load the car, and they would go to Pine Woods for the weekend, and they would come back on a Sunday afternoon, and they would just spend the weekend out of Pine Woods. And sometimes Ryan would be able to invite me, and I would get to go, and we'd throw our bikes in the back of Big Ed, his S10, and we'd, follow Edith or whatever her name was. I can't remember his grandma's name. I have to look at that. But we'd drive a couple of cars out there, and the thing was, it was like a journey to go out to Wentzville. Today, Wentzville is where most people in St. Louis live. Like, it is not far away. It's the booming part of St. Louis right now. Like, if you ask where most people move to in the St. Louis metropolitan area, it's the city of Wentzville. Now, it is west of St. Louis proper. It's about 25 miles to the west. But as you know, with urban sprawl, in St. Louis, everybody heads west. And that is the booming part where we live, like St. Charles. That's the county. Wentzville's in St. Charles County. But that Wentzville, St. Peters, where we live, it's called the Westplex. That is where everybody has moved to that used to live in Florissant, in Ferguson, back 20, 30 years ago. Almost everybody has ties to where we grew up. Everybody that lived where I lived back in the 80s and 90s now lives in St. Peters in Wentzville, in this area. It's kind of weird. So anyway, if my parents let me and they invited me, we would go to Pine Woods. And I thought it was so far away. Like, you'd ride in the car, we'd talk about what we're going to do. So let me talk to you about Pine Woods, what it was. It was a campground, and it wasn't that big. I doubt, now that I've looked at it on Google Maps, like the footprint of the place that I think used to be Pine Woods, because it's not there anymore. But God, it seemed like in my mind's eye, it was huge. But I think it's like that. If you ever gone back to your elementary school as an adult, Like you thought it was gigantic and the lockers were huge and the classrooms were gigantic and the gym was big. And then you go in the gym and you're like, oh my gosh, this gym is tiny. The lockers are so small and the classrooms are so small. Yeah, that's exactly what this is. I'm sure it was not that big. But we would go to Pinewoods, and the best part about Pinewoods was like we got to be it was almost like Ryan and I got to be like an Andy Griffith or something. Again, you know me and my retro stuff, right? I love that stuff. And maybe I did even as a 7-year-old. I don't know. My parents didn't fish. Nobody fished in my family, but we go to Pinewoods and they had a bunch of lakes. Probably weren't big lakes, but I thought they were huge lakes. So we would have fishing poles. Like Big Ed was a fisher, so we would go out there and there were fishing poles. And at the trailer, like at their camper, they also had like a shed on their like little plot or lot or whatever they where they had the permanent parking spot for their trailer or their camper. So we would get fishing poles out with the bobbers, and we go. The thing was too, not only that, they had a big like general store at Pinewood. So you go up there and you could buy some worms or buy some fake bait, whatever. And the thing was, my parents would give me like 5-10 bucks for the weekend, so we get that. But we would fish, and so we could fish. The biggest thing about going to Pinewoods though with Ryan was that we got our freedom to kind of do whatever we wanted for the weekend. Like we would sleep in the camper, which was awesome because that was just cool. Like we slept like in bunk beds, and that camper was awesome. It was just cool because you're a kid. Like it was just neat. Um, but and we had our bikes there and we got to run to the place. So we'd ride our bikes all around from one lake to the next lake. There was a swimming pool there that you could use at Pinewoods. It was looking back on it, it was kind of a dirty, nasty swimming pool, but who cares? We were like 8-year-old boys. We loved it. It had a slide that, if you've ever followed the Instagram or the Twitter account, Super 70 Sports, it was like something that would be outlawed for sure nowadays because it was like a slide that was like straight down. I mean, it would wonder we didn't break our necks, into this crazy pool that was concrete. I don't know how we didn't kill ourselves. We probably did. But we had that. And they had like a kind of like a community hall kind of thing. I remember we played bingo a lot out there. And you could buy a bingo card for a couple of bucks. And I remember this is one of the memories. So all the old ladies would all play bingo out at Pinewoods. Like it was a big deal. I think it was like on Saturday nights. Everybody would come up and everybody play bingo. You buy your bingo cards. It was like a cruise ship, but it was at Pinewoods. And it was a bunch of Missouri people instead of, people from all over the world. And I remember one time I won the coverall and I won like 90 bucks, on like a $2 buy-in for the card. I thought I was Daddy Warbucks. And I remember, I think like because I think, as I recall, Ryan's grandma was like big gambler, big bingo player, and I think she was a little ticked off that Mike won the coverall and won the 90 bucks because I only spent $2. Like she probably had like 10 cards, and I only had one card, but I happened to win. I think it was kind of crazy, but I do remember that, and I remember I think I bought like a Walkman, not a real Walkman, but I bought a Walkman at Walgreens when Walgreens the pharmacy. When I got back home, I bought like a knockoff with that money and put the rest, like, I can't remember what I used it for, but probably wasted it. But I do remember that. But the whole thing about Pinewoods was I love that we would go out there for the weekend and it was Ryan and I got to do whatever we wanted. Like we explored the woods because there was woods. I mean, there was woods, there were lakes. We'd ride our bikes on these paths that were in the trees. We would just be outside from the time the sun came up till the time it got dark. And then once it got dark, there would always be, at the campsite or where the trailer was, we could build fires. We had a fire pit. We could roast marshmallows. We could even ride our bikes after dark around the campground, which was awesome. Again, we went to play bingo at the hall there. You could swim. And the thing was, we really, really enjoyed kind of the general store because you could buy all kinds of stuff, right? You could buy stuff to swim, like pool toys. But the thing was, too, remember, this was like the 80s. So they had arcade games. I remember, wasting quarters on Pac-Man and Space Invaders. And I can't remember what other, but they had those two video games. But it was just, and they had ice cream you could buy. They had, all kinds of like snacky items. And it was just one of those places that for a kid growing up, it was amazing. Like I look back and those weekends were so So fun. But it seems like they happened like that. I probably only went out to Pinewoods with Ryan, maybe if I'm, trying to think like, did I go a lot or did I not? And I would say that if I had to guess, we probably did this maybe 5 or 6 times and that was it, 5 or 6 weekends. But it was so fun because it seemed like it was a world away when I was that age. I was as far as from where my house is to where it's sat, because I can look on Google Maps now, and that was unheard of back in the 80s, right? It was probably 25 miles from my house west. But man, like for the fun I had and for the disconnect from what everything was back home, it could have been a million miles away. And Ryan and I, we did what kids I wish still did today. Like we explored, we were in the woods, we were fishing, we were riding bikes all day, all day. We were in and out of that pool 3 times each day and meeting other kids from other parts of, St. Louis and other parts of Missouri that came out. And people actually there were people there from outside of Missouri because it's right on Interstate 70. And so people that were passing through that were pulling trailers would stop and camp for the weekend and continue on, through to Colorado or, they're going east to Illinois or where have you. But it was a very cool place. So looking back on that, it was an amazing place. And the sad story about this is that when I drive to Mizzou, obviously from my house, I got to go west on 70 and I drive past the exit where we got off. It's called Wentzville Parkway. And I've never been able to kind of place, like, I knew it was like kind of behind where this Walmart was. I remember because we'd get food at that Walmart. Like Friday nights, we'd drive out, we'd get like hot dogs, hot dog buns, sodas, and stuff, and stock the trailer for the weekend. And so I knew it was kind of by this Walmart. And the Walmart was even there back in the 80s and it's still there. And I'm always like, I wonder where I know it's not there anymore, but I wonder like where is that plot of land? I'd love to drive through there. It's kind of the kind of person I am. I want to drive through there because I know it's not there anymore because like there's subdivisions everywhere in Wentzville now. Like back then it was nothing. It was so far out. There was nothing out there. But now it's like the booming part of St. Charles County. And so I knew that land is worth a bajillion dollars. There's probably a subdivision on it. But the thing is there were like lakes. Like, so I'm wondering like did they keep the lakes and just build houses around it and make it a subdivision, which is what they have done. And so what I found was I went on this group on Facebook. I'm in this group and it's called, you grew up in Florissant if, and that's the name of the group. And it's got like 15,000 members. And what it is, it's just a bunch of people that grew up in our city of Florissant, which is where I grew up, talking about all the places that have gone out of business in Florissant and, photos of old places, and it's great. I love that. So you probably have one of those for your town where you grew up, kind of it talks about Florissant in the 50s and 60s and 70s, places that have gone away. But I put on there, did anybody that grew up in Florissant ever vacation, in air quotes, out to Wentzville, out to Pinewoods Park? And if so, help me out because I'm trying to place like on Google Maps, where was this? Because I drive past and I was like, was it there? Was it there? Was it there on 70? And I can't figure it out. And we're still trying to figure out the mystery, but I'll fill it in. But I'm excited because I kind of now have a more concrete idea. It looks like they're building a subdivision right now called Pinewoods Estates. And so I'm going to try to, in the next couple of weeks, drive out there and just see if like I can find a lake and kind of jog the memory because those were all good memories. There was a really quick little hit of childhood. But I'm wondering, let me ask you this. Do you have a place like that? There's that one song, I can't remember who it's by, but it's like that line, they paved paradise and put up a parking lot. It's one of those things. Like, I think this place could be very successful today. I think it'd be very cool for kids to go for the weekend and ride bike. It's almost like Fort Wilderness at Walt Disney World, right? To get away and just explore and just fish and just put quarters in a video game and eat hot dogs, ice cream, swim, play bingo. But yeah, good memories. And the funniest thing is when I put in the comments in there and immediately people are like, I remember Pinewoods. We went out there a lot. And, the ton of people jumped in there right away on that Facebook group. And you know who jumped in there last night? My buddy Ryan. Haven't talked to him in years. He's like, yeah, I went out there. And I'm like, Ryan, this is all about you. I said, I went out there with a buddy. You're the buddy. So now we're connecting on Facebook. So isn't it funny how the world works? It's pretty cool. So if you have any comments, I'd love to hear if you have any stories that are similar to this one, please let me know. Patreon.com/BRGS podcast. We'll share that next week. But until we talk again, you guys have a great weekend and a great week. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you real soon. See you, everybody. Have a good one.